Hey everyone, Jay Carpenter, Fahrenheit Advisors. I'm here with my friend and colleague, and not just Fahrenheit resident PPP expert, but the region's expert in all things payroll protection plan, legislation expert, Mr. Doug Jones. How are you, Doug?
Doing fine, thanks, Jay.
You and Barb doing all right, hanging in there?
Hanging in there.
Excellent. So, PPP, I thought it was in our rearview mirror. It's been squirrely since it started. Give us kind of the latest and greatest, and has it settled down at all?
Well, yes and no, Jay. It settled down a little bit, has been the case throughout this entire program, even though it's had a relatively short life. As new guidance has been issued, more questions have been generated. A little over a week ago, the SBA issued a PPP loan forgiveness application form, which started to put in place a structure where we could see how the SBA was going to interpret certain aspects of the law. And while it did add some clarity, it left a number of important issues unaddressed. Then a few days after that, on 11 p.m. On the Friday before Memorial Day, additional guidance in the form of 45 pages of new interim final rules were issued. And I have to laugh because only the government can get away with calling things both interim and final in the same titles.
I will not touch that one, but yes. So where are things settled now, or where are things now?
Unfortunately not. The SBA has promised there will be additional guidance, but there's no time frame on that. And then most recently on May 28th, the House passed a bill that proposes significant changes to the PPP program. It would still need to pass the Senate, where additional changes could be proposed, and we're told that could be considered as soon as this week.
So you talked about the House bill. What are some of those provisions that we should know about?
There are a number of changes, but there are two that are most important to most companies. The first is the extension of time to use the PPP funds from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. I should point out that some in the Senate want that to be 16 weeks, but either way, it would be a significant change. Then the second change is a reduction in the requirement that 75% of the loan forgiveness amount needs to be used for payroll costs, adjusting that down to 60%. Again, I should point out that that's likely to face some opposition in the Senate. And then, of course, any changes that the Senate proposes need to go back to the House with some sort of reconciliation program, which will add time to getting this whole thing resolved. Just as background, these revisions were heavily lobbied by the hospitality industry, mostly restaurants and hotels. They were largely shut down during the 8 weeks after they received their PPP money, so they didn't have any employees to pay with that money. Most of their employees were in fact on unemployment. So this extension of time, however many weeks it ends up being, will allow them to use the money as they're reopening. The reduction in the 75% rule to 60% was largely intended to cover urban hospitality, restaurants and hotels, where rent can be an even larger expense than the payroll costs. Both rules, if they end up being accepted, however, they are going to benefit companies in all industries.
Yeah. So while we wait on our friends up the road in DC to sort everything out, what should business owners and leaders be doing in the meantime?
You know, this is particularly difficult for companies that receive their PPP funds early in the process. Their 8 weeks can end as early as this week. So they've been playing this game under changing rules since day one. For those companies, I recommend that you play by the rules that are in the law now, and on the gray areas, follow what is the most likely interpretation of those rules. The current rules are based on a combination of cash and accrual basis, and it takes some planning to get those straightened out in terms of understanding exactly what payroll and expenses you can get in that forgiveness window. For companies that have some more time to react, and I have several clients whose 8 weeks expires in mid-June, there's several things I recommend. First, make sure you have a clear understanding of exactly what's included in payroll costs and track those expenses week by week. I see people either under or over counting payroll costs by incorrectly measuring payroll taxes, and also by miscalculating the benefit costs are includable. So you could end up misestimating your forgiveness amount very easily. Also, track your rent and utility bills and make sure you can find copies of any leases, because you're going to need to provide those leases with your forgiveness application if you're claiming a lease expense. And if you thought you were going to have to pay a one-time bonus to employees to use up your PPP funds in the 8 weeks, again, if you have some time, hold off on that and let's see what comes out of the Senate. It may be that with regular payroll, over more weeks, you're able to use all that up without doing the one-time bonus. Also, make sure you follow the rules on the application to track full-time equivalent employees. They are tricky rules, and they're different than what we all expected to come out. It takes some time to collect all the data and work through the definitions, so make sure you're doing that. And lastly, as Fahrenheit has told its clients all along, payroll PPP forgiveness is only a part of the puzzle, and people can spend way too much time on trying to manage that minutia rather than running their business. It's much more important, especially at the senior level, for people to be worried about running their business rather than eking the last penny out of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Fahrenheit can help on all of these things. I wanted to mention that as well.
Absolutely. There you have it, folks. Doug spent the time to go through this legislation so you can focus on running your business. He's Fahrenheit's expert. He's the region's expert on all things PPP. He'd love to talk to you about it if you have any questions. He is Mr. Doug Jones from Fahrenheit. Jay Carpenter, thanks for being with us, and stay safe.